Hello everyone. Today I wanted to run you through the process building up from gesture, a transparent structural drawing to a fully resolved drawing. It's a back view of Sarah. And so in this first layer I'm concerned with capturing the design, the gesture, and that's the body language. And we determine that by checking the axis of the shoulders comparatively to the axis of the hips. And we tilt or rotate the head as we may, observe it, and then we carefully evaluate where is that weight-bearing foot located relative to the upper body. Okay? And you'll notice that first layer was very lightly drawn. Now we can start to develop the transparent structural analogy for the skeleton. Rib cage, pelvis, and skull, wrapped and blocked. Okay? You'll notice we're measuring carefully the length now. We have a grid based on the head unit length as our comparative measure. And we want to know how long she is, essentially, and also how broad the shoulders are, how broad the hips are. And this is also the step where you bring more definition to those skeletal elements that come to the surface. Your scapula, elbows, rib cage, the spinal column, pelvis, knees, etc. You're determining the length here. Don't get worried about how wide it is. Really focus on how long you think it is. And the relative scale of the hands and the feet as blocked forms without details is very important. We have a tendency to make those things too small, so you carefully compare those to the head scale. And we're bringing a little more value contrast, darker lines, to where those skeletal landmarks are. This is a wrapped and blocked. You know what that means. We will put a three-dimensional containment block so we know where the center line and the near corner is, and then wrap it with elliptical cross contours. Third step is volume, or what I call volume. We're going to now consider the width or mass of the form. And that means that you've got to calculate using that same head unit how wide her thigh is, how wide her arms are, and so on. And you also are, considering the foreshortening of the forms here. So we're going to put cylindrical, cylinder type containment forms neatly around sleeves around those arms and legs. And then elliptical cross contours that are going to express the foreshortening of the form. Is it coming towards us? Is it moving away? That's all determined by the atmospheric perspective you lend those elliptical cross contours. We're thinking about overlapping forms here. So you'll notice that the joints, the outside edge one comes in and overlaps the other. Very, very important. And emphasizing those overlaps. You see it at her waist, you see it at her knees, at the elbows, and so on. There is also attention to the ground plane. You notice that I've drawn a ground plane in perspective, sending it back to a vanishing point on the horizon line that I just arbitrarily put at the halfway mark. But that creates a nice platform, right? A ground plane, so she's not floating. This is important. You need to be doing this all the time with your longer poses to put the figure in space, right? Give her somewhere to be, something to stand on. And I'm emphasizing near corners because that, in terms of atmospheric perspective, the near corners of those forms are where the core shadows will appear in our drawing. So here we go with the final step, the resolution. And this is where you bring your personal aesthetic into play. But I'm doing it here in a fairly standard academic way, if you will. And I'm paying attention to light logic. And so you see my little light source up there, and it's illuminating her from a particular angle of view. So the top of her shoulders, the top of her hips, the top of her calf are in the light. The planes going away from that source are darker. You'll notice I'm using lines that are crossing the form either on the horizontal axis or on the vertical, no random directions. And I'm really emphasizing near corners. And that, in fact, is where the core shadow is, as illustrated on the little sphere I've used as an example down there. So enjoy this process. I'd love to see you make some drawings that have a really nice finished resolution.